Hello, and welcome to the official podcast of the Cleveland International Film Festival, CIFF Speaks, sponsored by Wayside Furniture. I'm Dee Perry, and I'm joined by my producer and co-host, Aaron Spears. And Aaron, this is the festival's 46th year, but it feels like the start of a new era.
It sure does, and an exciting era. CIFF 46 attendees will be able to connect with each other face to face this year.
Yeah.
CIFF's first in-person festival since 2019, and not only face to face, but in the brand new forever home of Playhouse Square.
It's going to be exciting. CIFF is now a resident company in one of this country's most celebrated performing arts centers. And joining us to explain what that means are Marcie Goodman, the executive director of the Cleveland International Film Festival, and Gina Vernaci, the president and CEO of Playhouse Square. And thank you both for being with us on CIFF Speaks.
Oh, our pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Marcie, when CIFF 43 was held 3 years ago, it took place at the festival's, at the longtime home of the festival, Tower City Cinemas. At that time, what were CIFF's plans and needs for the future when that festival wrapped up?
Let's see, when CIFF 43 ended in 2019, we were still feeling once again that where was our home going to be? There was that uncertainty that we had to face year after year after year at Tower City. And so after CIFF 43, we were back in that position, just wondering what was going to unfold. Little did we know what was going to unfold.
I wanted to pick up on that because it seems like you announced in early 2020 that Playhouse Square was going to be your new home. So a lot happened between the end of the festival and the beginning of 2020 then.
Well, one thing happened. Gina and I had lunch.
Ah.
And we had lunch at the Ritz-Carlton because I can see us very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And we just talked about the festival's future in terms of location and the uncertainty. And Gina said, well, what about Playhouse Square? And it was just like, well, how could that even be possible? Yes, but how could that even be possible? There's a lot going on at Playhouse Square that does not involve a film festival. And Gina said, well, let's dream. And so we started to dream. And by the end of 2019, from our end at the festival, we had a board meeting on December 19th, 2019, where the board approved our move to Playhouse Square as our forever home. So a lot had happened that spring and summer and fall to get us to that place and to be able to say that we had a forever home. So the plan was that our 30th and final festival would be at Tower City in 2020, and we would have so much to celebrate. And then we would move to Playhouse Square in 2021. Well, something got in the way of that.
Yeah. I want to pick up the lunch story, Gina. Is this something that you had been thinking about before you just popped out and said it to Marcie?
Well, I mean, we had been talking about it because, just we had casual conversations. I'm a huge fan of what Marcie has accomplished and everything that the Cleveland International Film Festival brings to the community on so many levels. So we had been talking about, what's next. And she'd say, we don't know. We don't know what our future is going to be. We don't know what's going to happen with the facilities here. And then when we finally had our lunch date, I was just like, I'm just gonna spring this one on her and just say we've got theaters. What about us? Because it would be such a perfect addition to the scene at Playhouse Square. And I think that the feeling was, that there was really, and there is a lot of activity, how could you possibly make space? And we're like, let's just see what we can do. Let's see how we could try. Marcie and I have had this thing about let's get to yes. How fast can we get there? And let's get everything out of the way that doesn't look like a yes to see what we can do. And we both worked through that. And I have to say, it also took the cooperation of all of our resident companies at Playhouse Square to, scoop this way and come a little bit later, start a little bit earlier to just make the time available. But everybody actually was so cooperative about it. And we all know that it's for the greater good of the community.
I wanted to have you both describe what was attractive to each of you about the other's organization. Why did you start having those conversations in the first place?
Well, I think for us, Playhouse Square offered a magnificent home. And to think about those theaters and that we could actually show films in those theaters, which many of them were originally movie houses, 100 years ago, and to bring the original art form for that district back to those theaters would be amazing. And then for us just to know that it was a forever home, and Playhouse Square is a nonprofit, and it's not going anywhere. It's not going to be bought by another entity. It's not going to kick us out. I hope. We keep saying internally that we're quite certain that all the resident companies at Playhouse Square appreciate being resident companies, but no one appreciates it more than the Cleveland International Film Festival, based on, where we came from. And we're so grateful to be part of Playhouse Square. It's just incredible for us.
Yeah, we actually did talk about that detail, Marcie, about looking for a forever home. And the conversation we had was Playhouse Square is never going to be for sale, and that was something that sort of like loomed as a threat in terms of, where are you going to call your forever home? And it's like, we've been here for 100 years. We're going to be here for another 100 years. We're not going anywhere. So coming here really means that you're not just coming to another facility, you're really coming home. And to what Marcie mentioned about, the original art form of the theaters, of many of these theaters. And as we are celebrating the 100-year anniversary of when these theaters actually originally opened, it just seemed like it was just, such a perfect time on absolutely every level to see how we could make this happen.
Well, Gina, that's actually kind of a perfect segue, because you two have mentioned the resident company aspect to this, but can you give us a little bit more of an idea of what is that resident relationship like within Playhouse Square as an organization?
Well, it means a few things. I mean, there is a bit of cachet of being a resident company at Playhouse Square. We're the largest performing arts center this side of the Hudson River in the entire United States. So to be a part of that institution, this institution is a special occasion for everyone. But what it really means beyond that, to be a member, to be one of our resident companies, is that you really are a part of the Playhouse Square family. And we really work to accommodate the needs of our resident companies, to listen to how things are going, to see where we can be helpful, to make sure we're staying out of their way, because we want to be supportive and not overly involved, so everyone gets the freedom to do what they want. And also when it comes to planning, our whole life revolves around a calendar, and we give preferential treatment to dates as best we can to our resident companies so that those schedules get established, and then we fill in the programming around that.
And you mentioned support. How does that work? What does Playhouse Square provide, or is it different for each company? And what do you expect of the resident companies?
I mean, support, when I say that, I mean a supportive environment. A supportive environment to help work. Everybody has challenges, and every week, every day, challenges arise that you may not have anticipated. We all face that. And to the degree that we can help think through that and support, like, what is it that we can do that will help get us, to over this peak and to the next level, we do. Anything we can do, not that we have all the answers, certainly, but we might have something that would be helpful just in terms of, ways we have seen industries work in other ways, or make suggestions about how we can help make it a better experience, both for the administrative side, and for the guest. So we really view it in many ways as a partnership, because they truly are a part of our family.
One thing that you did for Tower City was turn it into something else when it was film festival time. I mean, you took over the whole look of the place with signage on the walls and the floors and the ceilings and the windows. So how much of that is possible in your new environment?
Well, we want to keep Playhouse Square as pristine as we possibly can. There's no need to cover anything up at Playhouse Square. We walk into visual elegance and excellence and exquisiteness. And so we will have enough signage so that people know the film festival is happening.
On the other side, Gina, what has Playhouse Square needed to do to get ready for CIFF 46?
Well, put on our seatbelts is because when you look at the schedule, it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, we knew it was a big schedule, except when you put it on a spreadsheet and looked at it, it's like, oh my. And so just in terms of thinking it through, just about from a staffing perspective, to understand what are all the needs that we would normally see with a performance. A performance would normally run for 2 hours or 2.5 hours. And here, this is such a dynamic environment that, a screening may last for 12 minutes. And then people are on the move. So just to think about how you deal with that dynamic and get everyone going in the right direction, make sure that we're properly staffed for it. And the other thing that is actually quite true is we don't know what we don't know. So, we're going to be learning as we go along, but we'll certainly do that with our friends alongside of us. We'll be supporting each other through this, because there'll be so much problem solving that we will be doing in the moment, because there's plan as best you can. You only know it once you're in it.
Very, very true. One thing we do know is there actually is a really interesting cinematic history to Playhouse Square. Could you, I don't know, give us the 100-year history in the next 3 minutes of what the cinema history of Playhouse Square is like, getting an event like this and being able to return to, what movie palaces used to look like?
Yes, upstairs at the Connor Palace, actually all the way upstairs in the balcony, there was a private screening room. And that's where they used to bring the managers from the region would come into that private screening room and screen the movies, and then they would go out to the region. In the day, there were all kinds of events happened at a film. There would be an orchestra in the pit, there would be oleo acts on the stage. And what is actually most interesting is 100 years ago, when these theaters opened, we were coming out of a global pandemic. And, and here we are again in the same moment in time, bringing this great renowned festival to Playhouse Square out of the same conditions of what we were, birthed into when the theaters originally opened. There's something a little mystical about all of that. But the history of the theaters was cinema and vaudeville. So it really takes us right back to the core of what made Playhouse Square so important and so dynamic. Comes right back home again.
So we just need to get a vaudeville company in residency, and we've got the cycle complete now, right?
That's right. Give us the phone number of the vaudeville company that we can sort of bring into the family, and I think we're set. We have great musicians.
That's funny. So, Marcie, although we've been talking about Playhouse Square showing films before, and even recently with the cinema on the square, I'm wondering if CIFF had specific technical and equipment needs for the festival screenings that had to be addressed.
Yes, and that's been the case for many, many years now. It all changed when the film industry switched from 35 millimeter to digital projection after using 35 millimeter or that kind of film for almost 100 years. And so when that happened at Tower City Center, all the projectors switched from 35 millimeter to digital. As it turns out, we had to purchase those projectors in order to keep the theaters operating. And so we were able to move our projectors to Playhouse Square. And it's kind of like, where's Waldo? Where are our projectors? But they're at Playhouse Square right now. And nowadays, projectors are basically computers, and they can be upgraded and updated. And we have spent the money to do that on at least 4 of the projectors. We own 9 altogether, but we're going to tiptoe into using them. But we are going to use probably 4 of them at Playhouse Square this year, and then the rest of the equipment we do have to lease. And although most of what we show is on digital projection equipment of a certain type, some films require other types of digital projection. So we might have a little bit of a mix of different kinds of projectors, but it's all computerized at this point. There's a lot of ingesting of films and making playlists. And I have no idea what I just said. I don't understand any of it. But as Gina said, and looking at our schedule, we have 300, call them what you will, but 300 events happening over 10 days at Playhouse Square. And that's a whole lot to make happen.
Yeah, that is exactly what I was thinking when I was envisioning what already happens at Playhouse Square. And Gina, I'm curious about the sheer logistics of programming the theaters. I mean, you mentioned a spreadsheet. So are you looking at a big computer screen that says this is open and this is not, or does it work some other way?
Well, with the festival in particular, what our team did was they took the theaters as a column, and across the rows put all of the screenings within each of those theaters. And they actually came in my office and put this giant schedule on my desk. And we looked at it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a beast, Look at all of these films, they start, at 9 a.m. and go until midnight. And it actually is, it's great fun, and it's a great challenge, quite honestly, because, we know how to do live performances. And we could, clearly we have that down to a science. So to have something that is so significant and so important and so much fun to put on the table and figure out is actually a great challenge for all of us. And I know the team is actually very into it and up for the challenge. And it will be a terrific accomplishment for all of us to know that we've pulled this off.
Marcie, as the festival, as this beast has grown through the years, being in Playhouse Square, how does that position the festival? Just a dream for a minute here. How does that position the festival to grow in the next few years?
Yeah, well, I will say, going from Tower City to Playhouse Square with a pandemic in the middle, the way we are regarding it is that we are starting all over. One of the hardest things I think for our team is that we don't have a baseline. So almost every question that anyone asks us, we're like, we don't know, but a year from now, we'll be able to say, well, last year. So we don't have that. So we really are just starting over. But much of the excitement about moving to Playhouse Square for us was the hope that organically we are able to do more year-round programming because we'll be in a theater district, and with the other resident companies, we're hopeful that there will be opportunities to complement perhaps some of what they're doing in terms of performances, things like that. So we're just looking at it as a whole lot of opportunity that's going to unfold. But first, we kind of need to get through the film festival.
Yeah, I didn't mean to jump ahead too far, but yeah.
See if anyone's left to tell the story. Earlier today, David Green from Playhouse Square, who's one of our heroes, just pulled a rabbit out of a hat for us, just did something miraculous. And then in his email, he said, "What's next?" And I replied, I'm like, David, you're so brave to ask that question, because something will be next. We just don't know what it is.
That's great. Well, speaking of what's next, Gina, it was announced in 2021 that you'll be retiring in 2023. So I want to get just a sense of how you're feeling now about what Playhouse Square stands for today after all the hard work that you and others have done, and what are some dreams for you about its future and your own for that matter.
Well, the accomplishments of Playhouse Square and what this community has made happen from something that came so close to becoming a parking lot 40 years ago is really a fantastic story. I think that we stand for hope and tenacity and entrepreneurship, creative thinking, never giving up. And to me, when I think about the Lumen as an example, so the 35-story apartment building across the street, I think there's something very poetic about the fact that that building stands across the street from where the wrecking ball once stood to take these theaters down. And to me, that building, rises like a phoenix in the middle of Cleveland. And I think that is a beautiful statement about the power of arts and culture in this community, because Cleveland is a city like none other, and all things are possible here. What I see that's ahead, I actually see great things are ahead for Playhouse Square and for me and my husband, because this is a tremendous organization. This is truly, I think, one of the best positions in the country. It is an organization that there are as much as we have accomplished in a few years, and a few short years, I think you will look back and you'll see the exponential growth that we go from here, because there is so much to do, so many great mountains to still climb, and the possibilities of do that in Cleveland at Playhouse Square, I think will be very gratifying for the community. For me, I will look on it with great joy to know that I played a role in it. And then I'm going to put my feet up and open the copper tone.
I'll believe that when I see it.
Something that has an umbrella stuck in the top of it.
Well, I was going to wrap up by asking, the theme of this year's festival is Shine On, and we were curious, what does that phrase mean individually to both of you? Gina, I feel like you maybe just perfectly answered that. But if you had anything else you wanted to tie in with that the theme with this year and what Shine On means to you.
I think Shine On means a couple of things. One is that there are so many conversations, crafts, films, performances to put in the spotlight. And I think that the chance to do that at Playhouse Square in venues large and small brings all kinds of opportunities for the community. I also think that in the theaters, in live theater, there's a ghost light in each of the stages. And the ghost light is, if you haven't seen one, it's a bulb that stands on a stand that's on each stage. And the tradition is that, when there is a ghost light lit on a stage, that the theater is healthy and is alive. And the fact that, the analogy of shining on relative to having ghost lights on the stages of all these theaters, I think just means that there's a beacon to go to, and it's all ahead. That's what I think is so exciting. It's all ahead, and it's everyone's to imagine.
And Marcie, Shine On for you?
Yeah, I think we talk about this a lot, and Debbie Samples, our marketing director, can address it better than anyone, but we are shining a light on Playhouse Square, our new home, and definitely on our filmmakers, whom we have not seen for a few years. We cannot wait to welcome them back. And can you imagine being a filmmaker and realizing where your film is being shown at Playhouse Square? Like, we cannot wait to shine a light on their expressions, that's for sure. And then we're certainly Shine On pertains to our audience, to our community, and everyone who has stuck with us these past, 2-3 years. So I think that's the greatest light that we want to shine, is one of gratitude.
Well, it's been such a pleasure having both of you be part of CIFF Speaks. Thank you for being here.
Oh, our pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you for the invitation.
We've been talking with Marcie Goodman, the executive director of the Cleveland International Film Festival, and Gina Vernaci, the president and CEO of Playhouse Square. CIFF 46 begins on March 30th and continues through April 9th at Playhouse Square. And then there is CIFF 46 streams from April 10th through April 17th. For more details on all of that, go to the CIFF website, clevelandfilm.org. I'm Dee Perry.
And I'm Aaron Spears.
And we want to thank our sponsor for this podcast, Wayside Furniture, keeping it local since 1937. And thank you for listening to CIFF Speaks.